For the first time in years, I woke up feeling light. The weight that had clung to me for so long was finally gone. There were no unread messages to remind me of obligations I didn't want to fulfill. No early morning calls demanding answers. No knots of dread twisting in my stomach as I waited for the next person to try and drag me back into their mess. It was just silence, and it was beautiful. I stretched, feeling the morning light filtering through the curtains. Everything was calm. My son, Caleb, was sitting at the kitchen table, happily munching on cereal, humming a tune to himself. I smiled at him, walking over to pour myself a cup of coffee. I ruffled his hair as I passed. "You sleep okay, kid?" He grinned, his mouth full. Uh-huh. No stress, no arguments. Just peace. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to savor the peace. It had been years since I'd had a morning like this, free of guilt, free of chaos. But deep down, I knew peace never lasted long, especially not with my family. By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. I hesitated, considering ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. "Hello?" A crackling voice came through the speaker, and my heart sank before the words even registered. "Maya, honey, it's your father." I should have known. Of course, they sent him. Dad was the one who always made the call when things had gone too far. The peacemaker, the voice of reason, at least, that's what they'd always called him. When manipulation and guilt trips failed, he was the last resort. I leaned against the counter, trying to sound indifferent. "What do you want, Dad?" There was a long sigh on the other end. "Listen, sweetheart, I don't want to fight. Your mother, well, she's very upset." I deadpanned. "She always is." A pause. "Maya, don't be like this. You know your mother, she's dramatic, but she loves you." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that before or after she tried to take everything from me?" Another silence. Then, a nervous chuckle. "Look, I don't know all the details, but—" "Then why are you calling me?" I cut in. Another long pause. "Because we need you. It wasn't we love you, or we're sorry, or even we miss you. It was just we need you." I could almost hear the desperation in his voice, but I was beyond caring. I laughed bitterly. "Need me for what? To be your personal bank again?" "No," he said quickly, defensive. "That's not." "Then what, Dad?" I pressed. "From where I'm standing, the only time you or Mom ever call me is when you need something." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. It stretched, thick and suffocating. Finally, in a voice so soft I almost didn't hear it, he said, "We miss you." I took a deep breath, holding back the anger that flared within me. "No, Dad," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You don't miss me. You miss what I did for you." Silence again. For once, he had nothing to say. And that was the dangerous part. The part where they almost sounded sincere, like they really wanted to reconnect. They dangled that thing I'd always wanted in front of me, love, acceptance, only to pull it away the second I caved. But I wasn't falling for it again. "Miss me?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "You excluded my son from a family dinner. You lied about the money I sent you. You tried to steal from me. And now you miss me?" "Maya," Dad's voice was strained now. "Please. Just think about this. Family is important." I laughed bitterly. Family? That word used to mean something to me, too. Now it just feels like another chain. I paused, feeling my fingers tighten around the phone. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "I am thinking, Dad. And I think I'm done." His breath hitched on the other end, and I could practically hear the panic in his voice. "You don't mean that." "I do," I said, my voice firm. "And I think you know I do." There was a beat of silence. Then, his tone changed, becoming colder. You're making a mistake, Maya. I didn't feel the usual twinge of guilt. Not this time. Maybe, I said quietly, but at least it's my mistake to make. I hung up. And this time, I didn't feel guilty at all. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. I had expected it. It was inevitable. But when I opened the door, it wasn't the usual confrontation I was bracing myself for. No screaming, no demands, no accusations. Sophia stood there, looking like someone who had been dragged through a storm. Her eyes were bloodshot, dark circles beneath them, her hair a tangled mess. She looked exhausted, defeated, something I had never seen in her before. Desperation clung to her like a second skin. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. What do you want, Sophia? She inhaled shakily, looking down for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Then she met my eyes. I need your help, she said, her voice small, broken. Of course, you do. I almost laughed at how predictable it all was. Every time she needed something, it was like she appeared out of nowhere, expecting me to drop everything and fix it. But not this time. I stared at her, unyielding. Of course you do. Her jaw clenched, frustration flickering in her eyes. Can you not be so impossible for 2 seconds? I tilted my head slightly. You mean like how you weren't being impossible when you called me selfish? When you let Mom lie about me? When you watched them treat my son like trash and said nothing? Sophia flinched, but she still had the nerve to argue. That's not fair, she said, her voice rising. Fair? I scoffed. Oh, now we're talking about fair. Where was fair when I was paying $1,500 a month for all our expenses, and you barely contributed $300? Her face twisted with annoyance. You had more money, and that makes it okay? I clenched my fists, pushing the anger back down. Silence, I snapped. For once, there's no excuse. You've had every chance to be different, Sophia. But now you've come to me when it's too late, when you've burned every bridge you could find. I took a slow breath, controlling the simmering rage inside me. What do you want, Sophia? She hesitated, a flicker of doubt passing over her face before she answered quietly, I need money. I could feel the cold edge of my smile forming before I even realized it. Of course you do. Her eyes flared with something, anger, hurt, maybe both. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't flinch. She was desperate. I saw that. But that didn't change anything. I was done. I softened my tone, but my words were final. I'm sorry, Sophia. But that's not my problem anymore. Her face crumbled, like I had just slapped her. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes, and for a second, I almost caved. Almost. But then I remembered everything. The years of sacrifice, the countless times I had paid her way, covered for her, cleaned up her messes. And what had she given me in return? Nothing. Not even a shred of appreciation. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a $1 bill. I held it up, watching her expression shift as she saw what I was offering. Her face twisted with disbelief. You can't be serious, she whispered, her voice shaking. You're really going to leave me hanging like this? I smiled sweetly, pushing the bill toward her. Good luck. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I shut the door in her face. For a moment, I stood there, hearing her muffled cries from the other side, but I didn't move. I didn't even feel the guilt that I had once feared. No. There was nothing. Just silence. For the first time in my life, I knew I was free. A few weeks passed before the first message came. It wasn't surprising, but it still stung. I should have been used to it by now. But every time I thought I was done, they would find a new way to drag me back into their mess. The message appeared on my phone just after dinner, and I recognized the number immediately. It was from my mother. Your sister is in trouble, the text read. We need to help her. You wouldn't let your own family suffer, would you? I stared at the screen, the words blurring for a second. I felt a bitter laugh rising in my throat. Wouldn't let my own family suffer? Watch me. I didn't need to respond. I already knew what would follow: more guilt-tripping, more manipulation. The pattern was always the same. Sophia had burned through everything she could, as usual. Her boyfriend had left her with nothing, and the bills were piling up. Debt collectors had started to circle, and now, for the first time, my parents were facing the truth. Sophia was useless. She couldn't fix anything. She was the problem, not the solution. And for once, it wasn't me they were counting on to make it right. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction that I couldn't quite explain. After all these years of being the one who fixed everything, it was a relief to see Sophia sink. She wasn't my problem anymore. The next text came from her, just a few hours later. "Mom and Dad are being ridiculous," she complained. "They actually expect me to take care of them now. I can't do this alone. We should talk." I rolled my eyes. Talk? Oh, now that she finally understood what it was like to be the responsible one, she wanted to talk? When she was drowning just like I had been for years? I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at the irony. She had always been the one to get by on charm, on being the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. But now? She was just like me. She had nothing left to offer, and now she was begging for help. I typed out my response quickly, my fingers moving without hesitation. "Sounds tough. Good luck." Then, I blocked her number. It was the last time I would ever hear from her. Or at least, that's what I hoped. A week later, the inevitable happened. My father called. His voice was hoarse, worn down, and I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity got the better of me. I answered the call, my stomach tightening. "Emily," his voice was tired, drained. "This has gone far enough." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. "Has it?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear him breathing, gathering his thoughts. Finally, he spoke again. "Your mother isn't well," he said, his voice almost pleading. "The stress of all this, it's affecting her health." There it was, the final card they had left to play. I wasn't shocked. It was the oldest trick in the book. If they couldn't control me with guilt, if they couldn't manipulate me with money, they'd try to use the one thing that had always worked before: "Your mother is sick." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "You mean the same mother who tried to steal from me?" "Well, she didn't mean." I cut him off. "She did, and now she has to deal with the consequences." I could hear the desperation in his voice. "Emily, please. You don't understand. Family is important." I felt the weight of his words, but it didn't change anything. I had lived through years of their manipulation, their expectations, and their selfishness. And now, I was done. "I'm thinking," I said quietly, "and I think I'm done." There was a long silence, and for the first time, my father didn't have a response. He was speechless. "Emily," he started again, but his voice cracked. "You're making a mistake." I could hear the panic in his voice, but it didn't move me. I stood firm. "Maybe. But at least it's my mistake to make." I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I hung up before he could find another way to manipulate me. The phone went silent. And this time, I didn't feel the familiar weight of guilt pulling at me. No regret. No second guessing. Just the quiet, peaceful feeling of knowing that for the first time in my life, I had taken control. Weeks passed, and life, as strange as it was, finally started to feel normal. I didn't feel the constant pressure weighing on my shoulders, the endless demands from my parents and sister that had plagued me for so long. I'd spent years living under the thumb of their expectations, believing that their need for me meant they loved me. But now I knew better. They had never cared about me. They only cared about what I could do for them. As the days turned into weeks, I realized just how much of a hold they had on me. It wasn't just the financial strain that kept me tethered to them, but the emotional manipulation that came with every phone call, every guilt-tripped text. They had trained me to believe that I was responsible for everyone else's happiness, that their problems were mine to fix. But for the first time, I had broken free. It was the most liberating feeling in the world. Sophia, of course, never stopped trying. She sent text after text, each one more desperate than the last. She tried guilt, she tried flattery, and she even tried making me feel sorry for her by bringing up the old days when we used to be close. But I didn't fall for it. Not anymore. The last text I received from her had been almost laughable. She said she was sorry for everything, that she had been wrong, and that she didn't realize how hard things had been for me. But the truth was, she didn't care. She just wanted something. Money. Help. Anything. She would never change. I knew that now. That night, as I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led me to this point. I had spent so much time blaming myself for their behavior, convincing myself that if I just tried harder, if I just gave more, things would get better. But the truth was, nothing would ever change because they weren't capable of change. They didn't want to change. They wanted to keep using me. But now I was free. The weight that had been on my chest for so long had lifted, and I could breathe again. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. Another message from my father. I stared at the screen for a moment, my stomach tightening. I should have blocked his number when I blocked Sophia's. But I hadn't. Part of me had kept it open, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he would come to his senses. But I knew better than that now. I opened the message, expecting the usual guilt trip, but instead, the words on the screen caught me off guard. Emily, he wrote. I've been thinking about everything, and I realize now how much I've hurt you. I'm sorry. I know I can't fix what's happened, but I want to try. Can we talk? I stared at the message, my heart racing in my chest. Was this it? The apology I had been waiting for all these years? The one where they finally acknowledged how much pain they had caused me? No. I had heard enough empty apologies to last a lifetime. They didn't change anything. They never did. They said the right words when they needed something, but the second I gave in, it was back to business as usual. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my emotions in check. I didn't want to fall for it. Not this time. I wasn't going to be dragged back into their web of lies and manipulation. But there was a part of me, a small part, that still wanted to believe. That still wanted the family I had always dreamed of, the one where they loved me unconditionally, where they appreciated everything I had done for them. I shook my head, frustrated with myself. It wasn't going to happen. I couldn't keep waiting for something that would never come. So, I typed my response, each word deliberate, each sentence cold. I'm done. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. And for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I didn't know what my future would look like without my family in it. I didn't know how I would feel as time passed and they faded further into the background. But I knew this, I was finally free. Free from the constant demands, the emotional blackmail, the guilt. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself. Days passed, then weeks. Life went on. Ethan, my son, thrived. He was happier than I'd ever seen him, no longer weighed down by the disapproval of his grandparents. He laughed more, smiled more. It was a relief to watch him grow without the constant pressure of being measured against my family's impossible standards. I'd found a new babysitter for him, someone who actually cared about him. It was a small thing, but it made a huge difference. I didn't have to worry about her criticizing me or talking behind my back like my parents had done. She treated Ethan with kindness, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something right for him. One afternoon, as I sat in the park with Ethan, a message popped up on my phone. I didn't recognize the number, but I clicked on it anyway. Uncle James, the message began. Proud of you, kid. You did what I never could. I froze. The words hit me harder than I expected. Uncle James had always been the black sheep of the family, the one who had tried to stand up to my parents years ago and had been pushed aside. I had always admired him for it, but I never thought he'd reach out to me. I hadn't heard from him in years. But there it was, a message of validation when I least expected it. It was like a weight lifting off my chest, the final confirmation that I had done the right thing. I smiled as I typed my response, finally feeling like I had taken control of my life. Thanks, Uncle James. It means more than you know. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't reach for my phone in fear or anticipation. I didn't wait for the next message to come. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. I was free. As time passed, things continued to settle into a new, unfamiliar rhythm. I didn't check my phone first thing in the morning anymore, bracing myself for the flood of messages from my parents, the guilt-laden calls from Sophia, or the constant reminder that I was still tethered to them in some way. For the first time in my life, I woke up with a sense of peace, like the weight I had carried for years had finally lifted off my shoulders. Ethan, my son, was thriving. The change in him was impossible to ignore. He was more confident, more carefree. He laughed with a joy that I hadn't seen in a long time. I could tell that the pressure of his grandparents' disapproval, the silent judgments, the subtle criticisms, had worn on him far more than I had realized. But now, in this new life I was creating for us, he was blooming. It was like I could finally breathe again, and so could he. I had found a new babysitter for him, someone who was warm and attentive, and actually seemed to enjoy spending time with him. It was such a relief to know that Ethan wasn't just being cared for, he was being cared about. For so long, I had been worried about him, about what my family's toxic influence might do to him, and now I saw him thriving without them. But it wasn't just Ethan who was thriving. I was too. For the first time in years, I was waking up not just physically rested, but emotionally lighter. There were no strings pulling me in every direction, no guilt trips holding me hostage, no demands for money, no emotional blackmail. I had learned to put myself first, and for the first time in my life, that wasn't selfish, it was necessary. I could do things I hadn't done in years. I went to the gym regularly, took care of myself. I rediscovered hobbies that had fallen by the wayside while I was busy trying to keep up with my family's endless demands. I even started taking short trips with Ethan, little weekend getaways, just the two of us. It was an adventure I never thought I would have, but it was exactly what I needed. Then came the inevitable moment of doubt. One day, while I was folding laundry and Ethan played quietly in the background, my phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up without thinking, but when I saw the name on the screen, I froze. It was from my father. My stomach twisted, but this time, there was no dread, no gut-wrenching feeling of impending doom. I was different now. My boundaries were firm, and I had already made the decision to stop letting them affect me. Still, I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Emily," my father's voice came through, tired and worn. I know you don't want to talk to us, and I understand. But, your mother, she's not doing well. Her health, it's deteriorating." There it was. The final card. The oldest trick in the book. My father always pulled this one out when he thought he was losing control. My stomach churned, but I didn't let him hear the tremble in my voice. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, my voice steady. "But that's not my responsibility." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Emily, we're family." I snorted. "That word doesn't mean anything anymore." "Please," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I'm asking for your help. You're the only one who can." "No," I cut in. "I'm done. I've been done for a long time." There was silence, the kind that stretched on for an eternity, and then finally, my father's voice broke through. "You're making a mistake." I felt the familiar tug, the guilt starting to rise up, but I quickly stamped it out. I had made my choice. I wasn't going back. No, I said, my voice firm. I'm not. I ended the call before he could say anything more. This time, I didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. That night, I stared at my phone for a long time after hanging up. I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I had been too harsh, if maybe I could have tried harder, but I already knew the answer. I had given them years of chances. And every time, they had let me down. They had used me, manipulated me, and then tossed me aside when they were done. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my time, my energy, my life. They had taken enough. I glanced over at Ethan, who was asleep in his bed, his face peaceful. This was my responsibility now. This was the family I needed to protect. And I was doing that, finally, truly, doing that. Days passed, then weeks. The phone calls stopped. The messages stopped. It was as though they had vanished from my life entirely. And it was strangely quiet. In a way, it was eerie. I half expected my phone to ring at any moment with another desperate plea, but it never did. One day, while I was picking up groceries, I ran into a familiar face. Uncle James, I said, surprised to see him standing in the produce aisle. He was grinning at me, holding a head of lettuce in his hand like it was the most exciting thing in the world. "Hey, kid," he said. "Heard you made the right call." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in ages. "Yeah, I think I finally did." "You know," Uncle James said, "I'm proud of you. You did what I never could. You stood up for yourself." It felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders again, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel that heavy, constant pressure. I felt free. "I'm just doing what's best for me," I said, smiling. "And for Ethan." He nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "That's the most important thing, kid. Keep going. Don't look back." And for once, I didn't. I didn't look back at my family, at the dysfunction, at the years of emotional and financial strain. I didn't need them anymore. I had everything I needed right in front of me. A life of peace. A life of freedom. A life with Ethan. That was all I needed. And so, I kept going. Forward. Never looking back.